Cropping, my favorite subject with photo editing. I could do a whole course on this and talk for hours on it because it's technical. Composition and setting up the image. For those of us that struggle with creativity, it gives us a real framework to work with, and there's reasons why these things work. And cropping is the number one for composition. When you imagine an image and you set it up, and then when you go home and you go and recompose it, and that's what cropping is about, is recomposing a shot. Now, I don't like digital zoom, mentioned that before, and I love the wide angle because you can capture all of it. Because as you're taking the photos, capturing all of it means you can go home and look at it and go, oh, I should have recomposed it and set it up this way. So with cropping, you can do that. Composition, I'll touch on it quickly. There's changing the aspect for one. So if you want to have a 16:9 to display on the TV, like I do with most of my images, or you might want a square for your Instagram feed so it looks more natural there as a square. There could be a number of reasons why you want to change it for a frame size so that you're going to print it at home. So the aspect, picture within a picture, within one photo, there could be a number of different opportunities to take photos, like I've mentioned. Telling the story, getting the context. So having your main subject but having the backup content in there is really important as well. And cropping, you can position, so you can have that rule of thirds we've talked about. Rule of thirds is where you have the main subject off center, either vertically or horizontally. So think of a tic-tac board and you've got two lines that way. You've got 4 intersecting lines. Having your main subject on one of those is fantastic, and then having the rest of the context in the background as well. Another reason why that's really good with the rule of thirds is you have that active space, the subject there looking into the frame. So you want to compose and crop your image so that the main subject, if it's a person, is looking in, or a statue is looking in towards the rest of it, having all that space around it. When you're cropping, make sure that you go around and do what we call border patrol. So border patrol, you go around and just make sure that there's nothing there that's kind of big blob of something that's half cut off, or something really bright in the corners, around the edges. It could be something that's really prominent, but really quite closely cropped up into or positioned up into the corner with a little bit of space around it. And having that little bit around the edge could create visual tension. So you might be better off just cropping in it a little bit more and cutting off that surrounding stuff around that object. Does that make sense? I hope so. Some more symmetry and balance. So repositioning where you're cropping the image could provide balance. So you got a large tree over here and a large tree over there, which is balanced, or a building or product. So if you've got a bottle of wine and then you have something off to the side there, if it's not quite the same height, then you want to make sure you've got plenty of space around it so that it doesn't look top heavy. So just have a bit of an experiment with that. Leading lines, one of the main ones. So if you've got a path going through an image, or you've got somebody looking and they're looking in one direction, that's a leading line. So that's leading the attention of your viewer. That is, and this is for yourself as well. So for your memories that you're capturing, when you go back to these later on, you're looking at these with fresh eyes and you're going, oh, that's what I was looking at. Or setting up the shot so that the main subject, then your attention goes from there, picks up on some sort of natural or man-made leading line and taking to the rest of it. So taking on a bit of a journey through the image. That's what all those leading lines do. What else have I got here? I've got rule of thirds, we've covered. Rule of odds. So rule of odds is where you don't have an even number of things, so it looks a bit more natural. So if you've got products or flowers, and you've got a bunch of flowers, don't have 2 flower heads in there, have 3 or 5, something like that. So rule of odds can look really good. It can look, but it doesn't look so posed and structured. Creating a different perspective. So moving where you're cutting an image and moving it off to the side might provide a different perspective than if you cut it over there. Isolating the subject, so moving it around, cropping off the edges could actually make your subject isolated from the background. So you might find a spot where you got the subject and the sky, and you take out this tree, and all of a sudden the eye goes straight to that subject with the isolated against the sky. So there might be opportunities like that. 2 more big ones here is cropping out stuff that you don't want. So if we've covered Snapseed healing and retouch, which are fantastic for removing stuff, but sometimes just simply cropping it out might be easier. When you do the perspective and you change perspective tool in Snapseed and you change it, have fills in the edges with the content of wheel stuff, it fills in the edges, sometimes doesn't quite work. So you can go in there and crop that out. So you crop out the stuff that you don't want. And lastly, with people, cropping really close, like getting really close with them, because with portraits in particular, the closer you get, the more intimate their photo is. And avoid cutting off arms and legs, and cutting limbs off halfway. It can look a bit awkward and a bit off. So I think that's over a dozen different compositional tips there that I've shared with you. But this is where cropping is so important, because it's the foundation of that composition. It's the foundation of that composition to really get everything positioned the right way and all the elements within the photo talking to each other. I know I went through that quickly, but let's do it practical now and have a look at how we do this within Snapseed. All right, so I've got this image here. This is down at Port Lonsdale, near in Victoria, Australia. I'm in Snapseed, go into the pencil, and we go to crop. Okay, and you have all these different perspectives. Now, depending on what your device you're using, you'll actually have the numbers and the names down underneath. You might just have the symbols. For quite some time, I didn't even realize that there's a free on the far left there. So if you may need to swipe left and get access to that. So the free basically means you can drag and have whatever aspect you want. Or the original, I love 16:9, so I'm going to stick with 16:9. And then basically you just drag the corner, and then with your finger in the middle, you can drag the whole lot around. Okay. So what I'm looking at here is just different photo opportunities within here. So here, I like what I'm doing here, where I've got the 2/3 of the image is the water, 1/3 is the sky, and the little structure at the end of the pier is off center. And there's still enough space around it that it's not awkwardly, see how that might be awkwardly cut off like that? So I'm trying to provide a bit more space. Okay, now that horizon doesn't have to be exactly on that line, that rule of thirds either. All right, so that's one opportunity there. You've got that, which is quite nice. The extra blue in the bottom there can actually, or the greeny blue, can add a bit more of a different element. So it might be nice to keep that in there. You might actually decide after you've taken this image that, you know what, I just want that to be the hero of the image for whatever reason. It could be whatever. Okay, bring it up here. We might decide that pier just off to the side there. Okay, we like the sky. Let's minimize this and make the sky a bit more of the hero. Okay, you see there on the left side there how I've got that little bit of stuff there. So I can either clone that out, heal that out, or I can just move it across. Okay, so that's another opportunity. Tick on that, zoom in. So you can see here that's one image. I'll go back, undo. Okay, totally different looking image, isn't it? Okay, I'm going to go for let's go for a square. Have a look at this. Okay, bring that over to there. Now here down in the bottom left corner, I've got a foreground interest, which is really important with landscape photography, is having that foreground interest. It's on a bit of an angle, so it's creating a triangle to go into there towards the pier. So that's one opportunity there. Another is that you just concentrate on just the textures within the water there. Could be just that. But anyway, you get the drift. You can see what I'm doing here. Experiment. If you don't plan on printing the image, then experiment with the free format, and you can just do whatever you want. Free, okay. Drag that. Now you might find sometimes that one of the corners might not work. So if that's the case, drag the middle and then drag the opposing corner. I've experienced that a couple of times with Android. Okay. I'm experiencing it right now, actually. It's interesting. Yeah. Okay, so have a play with it. Cropping, like I mentioned, really powerful, can really change the dynamic and the energy, the feel, the mood, everything. It's just so important. There's no right and wrong. That's what I love about photo editing. No right and wrong. Just get in there, have a practice, and yeah, share your photos and let us see what your before and afters and see how different it looks.